The following is a feature presentation of the Replay Sports Channel, the home for great games. This telecast is copyrighted by the WFL for the private use of our audience. Any other use of this telecast or any pictures, descriptions, or accounts of the game without the WFL's consent is prohibited.
This episode of the Replay Sports Channel is brought to you by Royal Retros, your ultimate one-stop shop representing the teams of the past. Royal Retros has something for you. Every product tells a unique story, and you can be sure that you stand out in the crowd when you wear something different. Head over to Royal Retros today. Use the code REPLAY to get 10% off your order. The link will be provided in the show's description. Well, hello there, football fans. Glenn Walker joining you from the Replay Sports Channel studios, and welcome to Week 9 of the Inside Access Week 9 review. Week 9 in the WFL was the official start of the second half of the 2025 season. Las Vegas played host to Denver amidst a two-game losing streak that had some fans hitting the panic button in Sin City. St. Louis, Birmingham, and Chicago dealt with some division foes, but resisted looking ahead at the big games coming up in Week 10. Philadelphia looked to extend its 5-game win streak in a primetime encounter against the DC Defenders. And that loud gasp you heard in Los Angeles last week wasn't a reaction to a new Hollywood blockbuster, but the Wildcats pulling off the upset of the season so far. The Inside Access crew has it all for you, starting right now.
Imagine stepping off the field after holding your opponent to just 157 total yards.
You'd feel pretty good about it.
Right. I mean, your defense absolutely suffocated them. You allowed barely over 100 passing yards for the entire afternoon. By every traditional metric, you didn't just win, you dominated.
Oh, absolutely. The math says you blew them out.
But then you look up at the scoreboard and you actually lost.
Yeah, which is just, it's a completely wild feeling.
It really is. So welcome you guys to the official halfway point of the 2025 World Football League season. This is the point where the statistical calculators are basically broken and the box scores are actively lying to you.
It's the ultimate cognitive dissonance for anyone who follows the sport closely. I mean, we've been conditioned for decades, right? We believe that yardage equals control, and, well, control equals victory.
Right.
But Week 9 just took that entire philosophy, crumpled it up, and threw it right out the stadium window.
Which is exactly why we are here today. Welcome to this deep dive into the midpoint madness of the WFL. We've got a massive stack of notes, film reviews, and the comprehensive Week 9 official league breakdown.
And there is a lot to get through.
So much. Our mission today is to synthesize this absolute chaos for you. Because if you're just glancing at the standings or, skimming the box scores on your phone, you are missing the real story.
You're getting a totally distorted picture.
Exactly. We're going to cut through the noise to show you how massive underdogs are suddenly biting back. We'll look at how top-tier teams are surviving by the skin of their teeth and what the playoff picture actually looks like as we cross into the second half of the year.
And honestly, the sheer unpredictability of this specific week is staggering. We are seeing structural collapses from Super Bowl favorites and historic statistical explosions from teams we completely wrote off a month ago.
I mean, you're going to hear about a 1-7 team pulling off the upset of the season despite being massively outgained.
Yeah, that was wild.
And a quarterback throwing 4 interceptions for a winless team. It's just nuts.
Okay, let's unpack this, starting with the biggest shockwaves of the week.
The defensive masterclasses.
Right, the anatomy of an upset. Because we need to look at why all that beautiful offensive yardage is a total illusion if a team can't protect the football.
All right.
Let's talk about the Arizona Rattlers and the Los Angeles Wildcats.
Everyone saw this score cross the ticker and just did a double take.
Seriously. You have the LA Wildcats sitting at a miserable 1-7, taking on the 6-2 Arizona Rattlers. Arizona has been a juggernaut all year, but LA pulls off the 19-12 upset.
In Arizona, no less.
Right. And here's where the math makes absolutely no sense. LA was outgained by nearly 160 yards. The Wildcats produced 157 yards of total offense for the entire game. Russell Wilson was under center for LA, and he managed just 134 passing yards.
Which is nothing in this league.
It's nothing.
Yeah.
In the modern WFL, how does a team win a game with 134 passing yards? Well, by entirely shifting the battleground. If you can't win the yardage war, you have to win the war of attrition. And that is exactly what Los Angeles did.
They just dragged them into the mud.
Exactly. They won through special teams and overwhelming structural aggression. I mean, Younghoe Koo was an absolute machine.
Oh, yeah. 4 field goals.
Right. 4 field goals to keep capitalizing on field position. But the real story is what LA's defensive coordinator did to Aaron Rodgers. They sacked him 10 times.
10.
10.
10 sacked. That feels almost physically impossible at this level of the sport. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is a veteran. He knows how to read a defense. How does a 1-7 team sack him 10 times?
What's fascinating here is how LA weaponized Arizona's own blocking rules against them.
Yeah.
10 sacks do not happen because players are just running faster or trying harder.
Right. It's not just effort.
No, it happens because of scheme. Arizona's offensive tackles are historically aggressive. They love to kick out wide and neutralize speed rushers on the edge. So what did LA do? They just stopped rushing the edge. They ran complex stunts right up the middle, crisscrossing their defensive tackles and linebackers through the A-gaps, the spaces right on either side of the center.
Wow.
So Rodgers had his tackles blocking empty space on the outside, while 2 unblocked rushers were instantly in his lap up the middle.
That is brilliant.
It was a masterclass in exploiting a single microscopic flaw in a protection scheme and just pressing that button over and over again.
And we can't ignore the emotional context here either. I mean, this was LA's first win since week 11 of last year.
Huge drought.
Massive. And let's not forget the history. Arizona humiliated Los Angeles 51-3 at the end of the 2024 season.
Yeah, right.
That blowout literally cost LA a playoff spot last year, so they walked into this game with a massive chip on their shoulder.
Absolutely.
But I want to connect this to another game that felt eerily similar. The DC Defenders upsetting the Philadelphia Stars. DC was 3-5. They go on the road to face the 6-2 Stars, and DC pulls off the 18-12 win.
Another stunner.
Yeah. And again, DC looked awful on offense, but they forced 5 turnovers. The dagger was rookie linebacker Edgerrin Cooper picking up a Christian McCaffrey fumble and taking it 61 yards to the house with under 5 minutes left.
And it wasn't just the fumbles either. Philadelphia's quarterback, Drake May, threw 3 interceptions.
Unbelievable.
But the most glaring statistic of all, Philadelphia went 0 for 5 on 4th down.
Oh, man.
That included a soul-crushing 93-yard drive where they marched all the way down the field only for the drive.
To just die right at the DC 3-yard line.
Exactly. Completely dead at the 3-yard line.
It's basically defensive judo. You have these massive, statistically superior opponents in Arizona and Philadelphia. They come out throwing these heavy, aggressive haymakers, racking up yards and moving the ball. But DC and LA just used that forward momentum, that heavy weight against them. They let them march down the field and then toss them to the mat in the red zone. But here is what I'm struggling with.
Okay, what's that?
If a team like LA can win while only generating 157 yards, Does this expose a fatal flaw in highly ranked teams like Arizona and Philly? Or is this just your classic freak accident, any given Sunday luck?
I mean, it absolutely exposes a flaw, but you have to distinguish between two different types of failure here.
Okay, lay it out for me.
When we look at LA sacking Aaron Rodgers 10 times, that is structural aggression. LA dictated the physics of that game. That is highly concerning for Arizona because it means their offensive line has a schematic vulnerability that other teams are going to copy immediately.
Right, it's on film now.
Exactly. But when you look at Philadelphia going 0 for 5 on 4th down, that is a breakdown in situational discipline.
So explain that difference for me. Why is going for it on 4th down a lack of discipline? Aren't the analytics always telling coaches to be aggressive there?
Yes, but analytics operate in a vacuum, and football is played by human beings experiencing extreme psychological pressure. When an offense like Philadelphia, which is incredibly used to scoring easily, right, suddenly finds themselves turning the ball over and getting stuffed in the red zone, a creeping panic sets in.
You can see it on their faces.
Exactly. The play caller gets impatient. Instead of taking the easy 3 points with a field goal or punting and trusting their defense to pin DC deep, they try to force the issue. They want the touchdown now to validate their dominance.
So they just lose their cool.
Right. DC survived because they remained perfectly calm in those high-leverage situations. Philadelphia completely unraveled because they couldn't handle the frustration of being denied.
That panic is fascinating. It's like watching a heavyweight boxer realize their knockout punch isn't working, so they just start swinging wildly and leave themselves completely open to a counterhook.
That's a great analogy.
Well, that brings us to the exact opposite side of the spectrum. We just talked about trench warfare and defensive masterclasses, but there were teams this week that completely bypassed the judo match entirely.
Oh, yeah. The track beat.
Yeah. They just fired up the jets and outran their mistakes with overwhelming high-octane offensive firepower.
Right. It's what happens when the math actually does explode in your favor and you completely overwhelm the opposing defense before they even have a chance to set a trap.
So let's look at St. Louis, Las Vegas, and Atlanta. First, you have the 6-2 St. Louis Battlehawks putting on an absolute clinic against the 0-8 Pittsburgh Maulers, winning 47-27.
Complete destruction.
Tua Tagovailoa was surgical. He threw 6 touchdown passes. 3 of them went to Devonta Smith, 2 to Ladd McConkey, and tight end Sam Laporta caught 13 passes for 126 yards.
And on the other side.
Well, meanwhile, Pittsburgh's Patrick Mahomes threw 4 interceptions, which meant he was just constantly handing St. Louis a short field.
Which is a death sentence against an offense operating at that level of efficiency. You just can't do that.
No, you really can't. Then you have Las Vegas. They were on a 2-game skid, but they snapped it by rolling past Denver 45-31. Jalen Hurts took home Player of the Week honors, and it wasn't even a contest.
He was unbelievable.
398 passing yards, 3 passing touchdowns, and 2 rushing touchdowns. He accounted for 5 scores on his own.
Wow.
And they needed every single one of those points because Denver's Derrick Henry was an absolute wrecking ball on the other side. He rushed for 135 yards and 3 touchdowns.
See, that matchup is the perfect illustration of modern football philosophy. Derrick Henry can control the clock and physically punish a defense, but Las Vegas proved that elite passing efficiency will always outpace a dominant ground game in a pure shootout.
Right, math wins there. And to round out this offensive explosion, you have the Atlanta Legends beating the Memphis Express 31-17. Joe Burrow threw for 390 yards or 4 touchdowns, and he sparked this massive, unstoppable 22-0 run in the third quarter.
Just incredible to watch.
It was. But here's where it gets really interesting for me. I am looking at these 3 games, and I am not buying the hype.
Wait, really? You're not buying Tua throwing 6 touchdowns?
I mean, I'm buying the stats, obviously, but I'm pushing back heavily on the narrative here. Look at the opponents. St. Louis played Pittsburgh. Las Vegas played Denver. Atlanta played Memphis.
Okay.
Those 3 opponents have a combined record of 5-19. Yes, Tua, Hurts, and Burrow looked entirely unstoppable, but they were playing teams residing in the absolute basement of the league.
Sure, they aren't the top tier.
So my question to you is this. Are these offenses truly elite championship caliber units, or are they just flat track bullies? Because hanging 47 points on an 0-8 Pittsburgh team doesn't impress me if they are just going to fold the second they play a real defense like LA or DC.
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, you have to understand the physiological and mechanical purpose of these games in the middle of a grueling season.
Okay, put me here.
It's very easy to look at a 4-7-27 blowout against an 0-8 team and dismiss it as irrelevant stat padding. But that is fundamentally misunderstanding how midseason momentum works. Beating up on struggling teams is exactly what a title contender needs to do at this stage of the year.
How does beating a terrible team make you better prepared for a good team, though? Doesn't it just give you a false sense of security?
Not if you are using the game as a live fire calibration engine.
A calibration engine.
Yes.
Yeah.
Think about Tua Tagovailoa throwing to Devonta Smith. When they're up by 20 points against Pittsburgh, they aren't just trying to run up the score for the fans. Tua is fine-tuning his release timing.
Okay, I see.
He's testing the absolute boundaries of tight window throws without the immediate paralyzing fear of an elite pass rush breaking his ribs if he hesitates for a microsecond.
So it's about building muscle memory in a real game environment.
Exactly. A 22-0 run by Atlanta isn't just bullying a 1-7 Memphis team, it is a rhythm builder. It allows the offensive line to build cohesion and pass protection against live, unscripted defensive line twists that you just cannot perfectly replicate in practice.
That makes a lot of sense.
The teams that struggle in the playoffs are often the ones who scrape by the bottom feeders, because it means their underlying offensive systems are fundamentally broken. Dominating a weak opponent proves your engine is highly tuned.
Okay, I can see that. You need the easy reps to perfect the timing for the hard reps. Which actually brings us to the final and arguably most important ingredient of a championship run.
The ground game.
Right. We've seen the defensive upsets where teams win by dragging their opponents into the mud. We've seen the passing blowouts where offenses hit terminal velocity. Now let's look at the razor-thin margin of error and the teams that know how to grind out wins on the ground and survive chaotic late-game surges.
This is where we separate the regular season warriors from the teams actually built for December.
Completely. Let's talk about the Baltimore Stallions and the Birmingham Americans. Baltimore is sitting at 5-3 after holding off a tough New Jersey team 23-20.
A very close one.
Yeah, and they did it squarely on the back of Saquon Barkley. He was the rushing player of the week with 196 yards, including a massive 61-yard touchdown. And because Baltimore had Barkley churning out first downs, they were able to hold off a late, desperate rally by Justin Herbert.
Which is so crucial against a guy like Herbert.
Exactly. And Birmingham followed a very similar blueprint. They improved to 7-1, beating Tampa Bay 26-17. They leaned on 164 team rushing yards. Bo Nix, who is making a massive case for Rookie of the Year, accounted for 2 total touchdowns, and kicker Cairo Santos iced the game with 4 field goals, including 2 from beyond 50 yards.
That is pristine game management. You use the running game to shorten the game, and you use a reliable kicker to ensure that every time you cross the 50-yard line, you are walking away with points.
But the game that truly defined this razor-thin margin of error was the Thursday night clash between the 7-1 Chicago Fire and the 1-7 Detroit Wheels.
Oh, what a game.
Look, Chicago built a 23-point lead. They got a fumble return for a touchdown from linebacker Brooks. They were cruising. It looked like another blowout.
Everyone thought it was over.
And then Detroit woke up and mounted a furious fourth-quarter comeback. Brock Purdy threw for 395 yards and 3 touchdowns. Josh Palmer was the receiving player of the week, catching 12 passes for 258 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Unbelievable numbers.
Just raining fire on the Chicago secondary. And suddenly, Detroit is only down by 4 points. Chicago barely survives, 33-29. Watching that game felt exactly like driving down the highway, hitting a patch of black ice, and feeling the steering wheel completely detach from the tires.
Really?
You're fishtailing violently, you're bracing for impact, and somehow, miraculously, you slide to a stop without flipping the car.
Well, this raises an important question about the hidden metrics of survival. Detroit's passing explosion was incredibly dramatic, right? It makes for fantastic highlight reels.
Oh, absolutely.
But we have to ask, how did Chicago actually prevent the collapse?
Yeah.
Because they were bleeding yardage. The answer is hidden in the time of possession. Chicago held the football for over 38 minutes in that game.
38 minutes. That leaves Detroit with barely 20 minutes to operate.
Precisely. And you have to understand the physiological toll that takes on a football team. When a defense is on the field for 38 minutes, their bodies literally begin to fail.
Just exhaustion.
Lactic acid builds up in the legs. The pass rushers lose that explosive bend around the edge. The linebackers take a half step longer to read the pulling guards on a run play.
Wow.
Chicago essentially bled the clock dry. They proved that time of possession is a tangible weapon. Even when Detroit was scoring in massive explosive chunks through the air, Chicago had already banked so much time early in the game that Detroit mathematically ran out of minutes to complete the comeback.
That's crazy to think about.
It was incredibly ugly at the end, but holding the ball is how you stabilize a fishtailing car.
So, what does this all mean for you watching at home? We've seen all these wildly distinct winning formulas over the last week: the aggressive defensive judo, the calibration of overwhelming passing attacks, and the brutal clock-bleeding ground games. All of this is shaping the standings right now, and it's setting up massive stakes for Week 10. Let's do a quick flyover of the playoff picture.
Yeah, the hierarchy is starting to solidify, but the margins are incredibly tight.
In the American Conference, Chicago leads the North at 7-1, which sets up a massive Week 10 clash with St. Louis, who is right behind them at 6-2.
That's going to be huge.
Over in the East, Philadelphia is still clinging to the division lead at 6-2, despite that shocking 0-for-5 fourth down collapse against D.C.
And the National Conference is an absolute gauntlet.
You are not kidding. Birmingham sits comfortably atop the South at 7-1. San Diego leads the West at 6-1, but they have zero room to breathe because Arizona and Las Vegas are right on their heels, both sitting at 6-2.
It's crowded.
So, looking at this incredibly crowded landscape, how do these mid-season standings actually reflect the true power dynamics of the WFL right now?
The true power dynamic is adaptability. Look at the teams sitting at the absolute top. Chicago, Birmingham, San Diego. They do not rely on a single fragile formula. Chicago can win a track meet, or they can hold the ball for 38 minutes and bleed you dry. Birmingham can rely on the dynamic playmaking of a rookie quarterback, or they can just hand the ball off, play defense, and kick 50-yard field goals.
Right.
The teams that looked vulnerable this week, like Philadelphia and Arizona, are the ones who panicked the second their primary identity was taken away. The standings are telling us that the teams built to win ugly are the ones built for a deep playoff run.
It is the survival of the most adaptable.
Oh,
If
yeah.
you can only win when the weather is perfect and the math adds up, you are going to be watching the championship from your couch.
Exactly.
Well, that brings us to the end of our midpoint review. We've covered a staggering amount of ground today, from the tactical mastery of a 10-sack defense to the rhythm-building passing clinics and the physiological warfare of ball control. Thank you so much for taking this deep dive into the WFL second half launch with us.
But before we officially sign off, I want to leave you with a final thought, something to actively think about as we move into Week 10 and beyond.
Let's hear it.
We saw some things this week that shouldn't happen, right? When a 1-7 team like Los Angeles racks up 10 sacks, or a 1-7 team like Detroit explodes for nearly 400 passing yards in a single half. How does that alter the psychology of the league's elite?
Oh, that's interesting.
Do these top-tier teams start playing not to lose out of fear of being the next highlight reel upset? When the teams at the bottom prove they can completely break the math on any given Sunday, it gets into the heads of the frontrunners. So watch for that psychological shift in the coming weeks. Do the elite teams stay aggressive, or do they start playing scared?
Wow, playing scared. It is a fascinating thread to pull on. The math has stopped making sense, the underdogs are dangerous, and now we get to see who actually holds their nerve. Watch out for that shift, everybody, and we will see you next time.
You've been listening to WFL Inside Access Week 9 Review Show. The WFL utilizes real NFL players and the advanced simulation capabilities of DK Sports Action PC Football. WFL strives to create a thrilling, strategic, and statistically rich football environment that balances realism with innovation. Please make sure to like and subscribe to the Replay Sports channel. Our next episode will be Inside Access Week 10 preview, followed by Sunday Night Football, San Diego Fleet taking on the Arizona Rattlers. I'm Glenn Walker. Thank you once again for listening to WFL Inside Access. We'll see you again soon. Thanks, everybody.